Okay, so we were designed to hold 192 inmates. Our current population is running about 275. Saline County is actually paying money to other counties for housing these inmates. When I have 90 inmates housed out of county at $35 a day, that's thousands of dollars of our taxpayers' money going out to other agencies, other counties, allowing them to improve their facilities, their jails, allowing them to purchase new vehicles for their patrol. That's all of our money being spent somewhere else. We can't keep that here. With our current location, we only have 2 rooms available for programs at this time. That prevents us from bringing in everybody that would like to help us keep our inmates productive members of society and offer them opportunities to help themselves. So we essentially have to pick and choose, okay, this inmate can participate this week, but he may not be able to participate next week, because if I have 30 inmates that want to go to a program, safety-wise, I can't put 30 inmates in with 1 volunteer or 2 volunteers and expect that to be a safe issue. I think the best option with that would be to build a new facility, because the infrastructure of this one is becoming, it's 25 years old as it is. So I think our best option would be to build something new, allowing us more programming space for the inmates to participate in various programs from the community. This would allow them to be productive members of society, or continue to be productive members of society. And we're talking the inmates that are going to get out of jail and go back into being your neighbor.
For more info on the Saline County Jail, visit our website, saline.org/2020/jail/project.
So one of the things that was an option that we looked at early on, and it's been a part of the discussion in Saline County for some time, has been how do we add on to the existing facility.
Jeff, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Yes.
The audio never did come on the video. So for those that are watching, we do apologize for that. And hopefully many of you were at the last town hall meeting out at the Kansas State Poly campus. And so you do know what it said, but we apologize. Obviously, this is our first run at this also. So I'll let you get back to it, Jeff.
Thanks, Bob. No, and we'll go ahead on the video part and see if we can actually get that incorporated for the download so that it actually runs through. So thank you, Bob. So we looked at what happens on the existing site. And as you can see, we've incorporated additional housing. We've incorporated a new booking area. We've incorporated new office space, reusing the existing area that's in the older portion of the jail. And then we've talked about how we actually incorporate the existing housing and things along those lines, whether that's a fresh area, freshen it up, and incorporate some new upgrades to mechanical and those types of things. One of the things I want to draw your attention to here is the pros and cons on this component. So I'm not going to read all of these, but take some time to think about what the pros and cons are as it relates to this option. All of these options here, or this option here, provides that 390 beds. So the study that was done early on fits within that bed count and provides a sustainable component for the next 20 years. What this doesn't do, this option doesn't do, is allow for the expansion down the road after that if there is a need. So that is one of the things that the county will have to take a look at in years to come if this is the option that so chose. It also looks at the long-term county expenses. So because this is an existing building, even though there's a portion that's new, we do have to take a look at what are those long-term costs as it relates to the existing building. So we'll do some of those upgrades as part of this process, but there will continue to be other facets of the building from just ongoing maintenance to take care of. So with this, we do have 390 beds. New addition to the left there of the page, we have a single story area that's on the far left of the housing unit. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in this area here, so all blue is identified as male and all pink is identified as female. So what we've got here is a single level at this area of the education for male, and then just above that would be a single level for female. Whereas on the right-hand side, we have a mezzanine level, a main level and a mezzanine level for housing on that area as well. So here is the mezzanine level for that area for housing. Central control on that main level, as you can see in the central red portion, gives clear access as well as visual to all those areas. Then on top of that mezzanine level would be another housing unit for both male and female, multiple housing units here, but it would be a stacked component here with then a mezzanine level as well on top of this. The other piece to this is that the middle section includes the programs area. This also has 2 elevators for both staff and inmates or in custody to travel up and down. So because this is a more of a tower element, housing element, you do have to have inmates and staff moving through the vertical transportation of an elevator. Here's the mezzanine level. Also in this concept, we have the green area is exercise. We've identified it in that fashion. So the exercise area is actually shared with 2 different housing units. So that's a management component that the sheriff will have to work through the day for exercise, which shouldn't be an issue. Here's a simple axon that we've done to extrude out a portion of the building, just to give you an idea of how this building actually sits on the site. So you can see the housing that we talked about here, that everybody, or that's stacked, that we just looked at. This is the booking area that we also looked at. All this is the existing housing area and kitchen and laundry on the other side. This is the new office space for the sheriff's office patrol, and then a new public entry space as well for the area. And it would also include video visitation. As you can see, this option takes up the entire area of the site. We do need to look at parking and those types of things as it relates to both staff and public and how we handle that. And we have shown you a couple of options over the other town halls of what that may look like. So there are options to be able to provide both secure staff parking as well as adequate public parking. So one of the other pieces that we talked about early on was how do we handle the exterior of the tower as it relates to the residential. So we've taken a look at creating a elevation and a concept here that you can see that starts to break the building up a little bit more like a residential area, starts to create a scale that may fit within what's going on within this community and within this area. We've looked at different materials, so we've talked about those materials, but there's nothing that we've actually said this is the material. We have looked at precast, which gives us a lot of options from both color to forms to things along those lines that may make it a little bit more economical. We've also looked at metal panel. We've looked at brick to start to think about the existing building and how to tie those 2 together. So you start to see some datum lines that we've created, both the horizontal glass there at the lower level, as well as the datum line right above that, to create that elevation from the existing building through to the new addition. One of the things that I think this shows is that as much as we can break up the facade, break up the building itself, this still is going to be a very large building on this site compared to the residential area. The top left picture is a view there of the new entry and then of the sheriff's office space, new sheriff's office space as well. So all of that is incorporated and looked at. The large glass area on the housing area is where we have the rec area. So creating a lot of natural light to come into this space and into the areas, as well as creating space for area for air, natural ventilation, and those types of things into the rec yards. The second option that we looked at was the 2 facility option, we like to call it. This option includes the reuse of the existing building, keeping it as is with some small renovation to the existing office space for the sheriff's office and staff. This would, as you can see, and I'll show you here in a minute, the greenfield site component of this option, but this in the pros and cons area would allow for 388 beds, both with the existing housing as well as the new housing. So that's a combined number. This, as we look at long-term county expenses down there at the bottom, building and upkeep and staff. So when we talk a little bit later about staff, what you're going to find is with this option, we have to double up some of that staff. Or we have staff that has to travel from this facility to the greenfield site facility. There's a transportation component that goes with this, as well as programs and other staff that may have to jockey back and forth between both facilities. One of the other pieces that I think is important to look at as we've identified some pros and cons is control over the county risk. That's one of the other items you will see here on all three items. And this allows for the county to actually start to think about the overall long-term bed needs. So as you've seen in that study that Jim did, and as you've seen as we've looked at how bed count works for this county, the other piece that we don't know, and it's an item that nobody knows, is what does it cost to have to continue to house out of county. We can estimate that. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but that's a risk that the county has to take, because at the end of the day, if more and more counties are looking to house out of county, those dollars start to go up, and that's cost that the county has to take. With all of these options, the county actually has the ability to be able to control what that housing number is that they can house in their own county. This is the second portion of the two facility site. This is a greenfield option, or a greenfield portion of the option. This would be the central intake location there in the purple. This would also have the medical and mental health component there in the middle between the housing area and booking, and then the housing pods there at the top of the site. This also gives the county the ability for future expansion. As you can see, the dashed line for housing, office space, programs, kitchen, laundry is all included here. So that's a future growth component as the county looks down the road, whether that's 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. This would give that ability for the county to expand. So with that, we want to go to the larger plan just for a minute. One of the things that you'll realize with this option is, as I said earlier, as we looked at the existing building portion, this also has housing. This has booking as a central location, but it also has office space. It has programs. So those offices, those programs, although there'll be dedicated staff here, there will also be staff that has to commute back and forth from each facility. So as you think about this option, that's one of the pros and cons that might be considered as we look at it. Again, an axon to begin to look at how the building actually fits on the site, begin to look at how the housing works, medical area and booking works in this type of facility. You see the front entry there at the public parking spot there at the lower portion. So the third option that we looked at was the greenfield option. And in the greenfield option, this is an option to abandon the existing building and build a brand new facility on a greenfield site. So with this option, we're probably looking at something along the lines of about 12 to 18 acres to give for the ability for expansion, as well as for the new build of this building here. So you can also look at the pros and cons on this one as well, and you can read down through those. This one has a lot of good things to the county and long-term needs for the county. One of the cons to this portion or this option is the building is the existing building is not reused for at least for sheriff's office and for jail purposes. The county may have other options to look at as they think about what that building could be down the road. So although it's a no right now, there are things that may be used in that building down the road. And the county can take a look at those as they see fit, as they look at this option. So on the enlarged plan, you can see the booking area, medical and mental health. This also has all the programs up in this area here. See if I can get my cursor there. Up in this area right in here, right between the housing area and the medical area. So this gives the ability for inmates to be able to move from the housing area to programs, and move having programs in the housing themselves. So this does give a little bit of space there for that. We've also looked at some courtyard spaces. So by reorganizing the medical area and the mental health area, this has allowed us to create some interior courtyard spaces that brings a lot of natural light in, as well as looking at overall outdoor space for both these inmates at this location, or it could be inmates from the housing area at the top. So it could be a multifunction type of space. This does include all the program space that's been incorporated from day one. So it says all the housing or all the office space, locker space. This includes video visitation. It includes contact, non-contact visitation. It includes transportation to and from court. So there are office space for those individuals. So all of that's been incorporated in this facility here. And again, here's an axon to kind of, again, show you how that starts to lay out on the site. As you can see, we've shown some green space, considerable green space across the, to the left there of the housing area up on the top portion. So that does give the county the ability for future expansion. Also to the right of the medical and mental health area, there's the ability for expansion in the future as well. So this, from that 12 to 18 acre site, this gives the county flexibility down the road to look at different housing components or different additions as they see fit, as jails change and as inmates change. So as we've looked at the exterior of the Greenfield site, one of the things I want to caution everybody is we took a stab at it. We've talked with the committee and Sheriff's Office and Phil on the exterior, but recognizing that when a site is picked, if this option is picked and a site is actually picked, that at that point, the exterior design may tweak a little bit or change a little bit based on what that site is. So although we're looking at what the building may look like, we would need to be cautious as we think about where that site may be. We may be more in an industrial area or an area that has residents. That may change what the materials are. It may change what the idea and the scale of the building needs to be. But to give you an idea of what this building may look like and what we're thinking about as it relates to forward thinking on a jail. So the bottom image shows you that front entry space with glass, open space, inviting, transparent to the public. To the left is office space, natural light, daylighting into the office area. And then to the right is the booking area and more secure area where the intake is. So on the left-hand side, you'll see an axon that shows the building as a whole. You'll see those little pop-ups that show some clear area there. So we are actually envisioning that each housing area has a clear story that brings natural light into those housing areas, as well as booking. And then also we think about that as it relates to the mental health and the medical area. We do have those courtyards that are bringing an abundant amount of natural light into that area. So we can take a look at that as we study it a little bit further if this is the option that so chose. Material-wise, again, we look at this as a precast, potentially metal panel, brick, concrete masonry units, a lot of different options as it relates to the Greenfield site as we look at what that is and the context that we end up finding if that's the site or if that's the option that's chose. One of the questions I want to circle back, that's a really good question. One of the questions that came up was program space, and can I discuss program space a little bit in more detail? And what I mean by program space, this may be the faith-based programs. This may be programs that are GED related. These are the programs that are currently being done by the staff and other volunteers that come in, both from life skills to anger management to those types of things. And when I talk about that, that's right in this area here. We think about that more from, we have office space for staff and volunteers to come in and get prepared for those programs. Then we also have classroom space and individual breakout areas. So we have the classroom space for smaller groups of under 10 or 10 to 12, or they can be arranged to be smaller groups as well. We also have an area, a courtyard area there, and in that courtyard area, the green space just to the bottom of the classroom space, that could be used for outdoor rec type time. That could be used for a garden, flowers, a lot of different options that can occur there as we think about different programs through this facility. So some of the community comments that we've received here over the last few months, and I'm going to run through them and then I want to talk about them a little bit more. So why not sweat the status quo? Why don't we stay with what we've got? What are the other options that are out there? Have you studied anything else? How do we meet the county's needs? And then community outreach. So let's talk a little bit about status quo for a second. So one of the things that we've looked at as it relates to status quo is keeping the building as is. There's a lot of things that probably will need to occur. There's deferred maintenance. There are equipment, mechanical equipment, security electronics equipment, and other equipment that's in that facility that's going to need replacement and repair. Their mechanical equipment, some of the boilers, although they've been retrofitted a tad bit or reworked to get them to be functioning and working as we wait to see what the next option is. Those things may have occurred and some of that has occurred. But that's a short-term solution. The long-term solution for status quo needs to be new equipment. So those are costs that would need to be incurred. Currently, if you've had an opportunity to actually walk the site or walk the building, sorry, you'll find that there's water leaks and both in a lot of different areas within the building, both in the basement as well as in the space on the main level. The roof needs to be replaced. So that is one of the items that would need to be done from a deferred maintenance. The other item, and part of the video you would hear in there is some of the underground plumbing that's currently either crushed, not working correctly. All of those things would need to be replaced if we stayed with status quo as the option. And those are things that can be done over time, but some of those things need to be done within the next 2 to 3 years to make this work. And that's a cost that the county would see and need to incur. So those are some of the things that if that's the option or that's the decision that the county makes, those are still some of the things you'll see. There's also staff. Although it's staff today, there are staff that, as we've talked about programs, as we've talked about medical and mental health, as we've talked about counseling and those types of specialty groups, those people would need to be hired and brought on board. So those still would need to be part of what we're trying to get accomplished. Are there other options out there? So we looked at some other options. We looked at an option that may be of a less dollar amount because we understand that the cost is the cost for the facility that we need for this county. On the same hand, as we've looked at those dollar amounts, whether that's a $50 million project, a $65 million project, whatever that dollar amount is, as we look at it, that type of option doesn't provide for the bed needs that the county has. As we've looked at a couple different options, we found that we can get bed count from about 250 to 290 and fit within some of those dollar ranges. But the county already is exceeding that or being very close to exceeding that bed count currently. So again, those are things we can look at. Those are things that the county can pursue, recognizing the long-term 20-year goals and the long-term 20-year sustainable option is what we're after at the end of the day. So that's kind of where we're at. We've also looked at and benchmarked some of the other facilities that are around the area that's been built. So we've looked at a lot of different things as it relates to different options, different ways to solve the issue here at Saline County. And really, when it came down to it, the three options that we've presented today are probably the best three options to look at for what this county needs and to be able to look long term. So with that being said, I think as it relates to meeting the county needs, that's the three options we've provided is what meets the county's needs for the long term. We don't know what's going to happen with bed count as it relates up or down. And then we also don't know what the housing out of the county means as other things occur within that's not the control of the county or the sheriff's office. And then I'm going to talk a little bit later about community outreach, but I want to tell you that there will continue to be community outreach related to this over the next few months, both from the sheriff's side as well as from the county side. So one of the things that I want to talk a tad bit about here is the incremental operation costs. So I mentioned earlier about what did we looked at from the status quo standpoint, what are some of the options we looked at. So we wanted to boil this down in a fashion that I think helps you see a little bit better of what the costs are for a long-term 20-year solution. So if we stay with status quo, when I say it's a $0 amount, what I mean by that is, you're right, the dollar amount is zero. The county is going to continue to pay dollars for maintenance and utility of the existing building for the life of that building, as long as you stay with it, okay? So whether that's, those are just maintaining a building and keeping the electricity, water, and those types of things on a regular basis. So what do each of the other options, how do they compare? How do they look at each other from that standpoint? So each of those options, the addition to the existing building will be about $2.9 million more on the maintenance and utility. And most of that's on the utility cost side, not on the maintenance cost side, because that's part of the project is to actually maintain and bring that existing building up to speed. The two facility site would be to do some remedial work to the existing facility, but not a whole lot. But then also, this is, again, a lot to do with the utility costs, so $2.8 million delta from the status quo. And then on the greenfield site option, the only reason it's in red is because it's a savings. The county could potentially see about a $1.1 million savings from the standpoint of being able to see utility costs go down based on the energy efficiencies of that building over the 20 years. So let's talk a little bit about additional staff costs. So one of the asterisks I have down there at the bottom is that this cost does include any additional specialty staff that would be incorporated in the jail, whether it's at any of these stages or any of these options. Those numbers you can take a look at. So zero again means that this is the staff we have, and we're going to continue to have that staff. That staff is going to continue to get a raise, benefits and those types of things will continue to go up, and the county will continue to spend that dollar on those things. So you can see there the other options and what those dollars show from a staff perspective. What's fascinating is the two facility site is less than the addition, and the reason for that is because we're able to create an efficiency with the new build from a standpoint of staff. So that's the difference in that delta there. And then out of county housing. So this is a number I believe you've probably seen before. It was a number that was shown as part of the study that was done before us. So this is kind of where that is. recognizing that, again, if you go back and look at that study, it looked at a $35 a day, which is currently what the sheriff's spending to house out a county for any inmate he has. We don't know what that dollar amount looks like. We did escalate it out. It was escalated out. And I think it gets to about $85 a day at the 20-year period. So you can kind of see what that looks like. I will say this, and I don't say this because of where we are today in our world today. I say this because I had said at the last town hall meeting, states, other counties are growing, and because they're growing, they're actually housing out a county as well. And as long as those continue to grow and look at finding places to house inmates, that number may go up. And then again, if other counties build facilities, that may go down. But this is one of those pros and cons that we talked about early on, is where's that risk that this county wants to take at the end of the day. And this is one of those that you'll have to look at. So with that being said, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to open this up to Cole. And Cole's with Turner Construction, and he will talk a little bit about the costs for all the options. So Cole, would you?
All right, thanks, Jeff. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, as Jeff mentioned, my name is Cole Meyer. I'm the lead cost estimator for Turner Construction. And so I'll walk you through what we've got included in these costs and how we develop them. So the first thing, what's included? So all the three options do vary, but we've got new building construction costs, building additions, renovations and remodeling of the existing facility, site costs, which include your utility infrastructure, access roads, parking, also some owner soft costs, the design services, so architectural and engineering, geotechnical investigations, special inspections and testing, owner furniture, fixtures, and equipment, sometimes known as FF&E, and even a land purchase allowance and cost for temporary relocation of inmates and staff during the renovations or remodeling that would occur. So how we develop these is, one, we review the plans with the design team, participate in the meetings with the county, and importantly, listen to some of the comments that are made as it's kind of an ever-evolving process, so that we can stay on top of the design intent and help develop ideas for the team. We coordinate with the team, and then to kind of set a baseline of a price point of what could be included for some of the different building systems. And then we do a quantity takeoff on all building materials and building systems. So that's trying to develop an accurate quantity of concrete for the foundations, masonry for some of the walls or precast concrete, roofing, things like that. And then we utilize our current unit pricing from the market. Recently, we had bid out a similar jail project. So we've got good cost data on that that's recent. And we also have many projects that are similar across the nation that we're able to compare to, along with our experience as a collective team. So walking through these here, the addition, you can see the construction costs are about $70,621,000. With the soft costs at $13,580,570, making the total project cost $84,201,000. The next option here is the two facility. That is looking at construction costs of $68,425,000, with soft costs of $12,582,250. And then total project costs of $81,007,250. Then the last option here is the greenfield option. So this construction cost is $76.2 million. Soft costs at $13,454,000, with the total project cost just under $90 million at $89,654,000. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that when we get to Q&A.
Cole, just a couple things I wanted to touch base on with you here. I think we've talked through this, but on the two facility site, does the cost include just a fresh up and update of the existing facility? Is that kind of what you've got included currently?
Yeah, the construction cost component with the 2 facility scheme, it does include remodel and we'll call them facility improvements. So upgrading the mechanical system, HVAC and plumbing, roofing, some of those items that were noted as deferred maintenance items that'll be needed in the next 2 to 3 years.
Excellent. Thank you. So with that, what I'd like to do is open it up for questions. Once we have those questions, I know we've got a handful that have been coming in, so I'll take a look at those and we'll try to answer those here. The rest of you can ask questions as we go forward, and we'll try to get those answered. And then I'll talk to the other component here on the slide before we wrap up. So do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. Do you just want me to read them?
Yeah, if you would read the one, and then we'll either.
Yeah, we have a handful to go through here, so we'll start here.
Great.
The first question is from Lynn, and they first asked some things about staffing costs, but I believe we answered those in the presentation. So if not, please resend that portion of your question. But the rest of the question was, the jail has a bit of an issue with staffing the current facility. Where are the new employees going to come from without a large increase of wages for new hires and existing staff? If a green site is chosen, what is going to happen to the existing facility? Depending on that use, it could create an even bigger hiring issue if both facilities are competing for the same people.
It's a very good question. I think that, Sheriff, I don't know if you would have the opportunity to be able to answer that question or not. Roger, are you there?
Try now.
Roger, go ahead. You might be muted there on the right-hand side.
I'm muted on this side.
Okay. On that question, I think that we will circle back and see if we can get Roger, and if we can, we'll have him talk a little bit about staffing. I do think there is a discussion there on staffing. We have looked at that as a holistic group. So from a staff perspective, I think we can answer those questions and be able to share what that means. As it relates to competition to what's at the existing facility if we build a greenfield site, I can't speak to that because we don't know what that might be from the standpoint of a different operation or what have you. So, but I think we can circle back and make sure we get that one answered.
The next question is from Aaron Tarver. Can you discuss the programming space in more detail? What sort of capabilities will it have? And then a follow-up comment was, could 12-step meetings be conducted virtually? For example, could the library have a partner room linked to rooms in the programming space? This could facilitate easier support for 12-step groups and avoid security approval for everyone to physically enter the jail.
So I did walk through the programs area. I hope that helped understand kind of what we're thinking there. As it relates to technology, as it relates to how those get incorporated from the standpoint of first appearance, being able to do virtual type programs and those types of things, I think that's a forward-thinking idea, and I think that's out there. I think that is something that we would look at as it relates to this project to incorporate those types of things. So I don't think that's a problem one bit, whether that's in the existing site, whether that's the 2-facility site or on the greenfield site. I think that's an option that can be looked at both from a standpoint of security as well as who's on it and those types of things. There is some concern, and we've heard this not just from this group but others, of when you do those types of virtual programs, how to control that from the standpoint of who's on the other end and those types of things. So there is some things that we'd have to think about logistically and program-wise. So that would be a discussion point as we move forward to think about. But very good question.
The next question is from Tom Mertz. This may be one if the sheriff is available to chime in, would probably be addressed to him. Currently, the sheriff's office, jail, and police department are all in the same location. Does the sheriff and/or police chief see any problems in moving them to different locations? Also, if the greenfield option is selected, would any sheriff operations stay at the current location?
Roger, are you on?
This is Bob. Obviously, we're having trouble with Roger, but I can answer that a little bit. The city police department and the sheriff's department are two different entities. The jail belongs to the sheriff's department and they run the sheriff's department. The police department would not be involved in this. All they do with the jail is bring prisoners to it. I mean, they don't staff it. They would still have their headquarters, I presume, and I'm not speaking for the police department, but I presume they would remain in the building themselves as far as their headquarters is concerned. So they're really not part of the picture. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Bob. So I did reach out to Roger just to check, and we had a little bit of technical piece there, but Roger will look at the staff questions and the others, and we'll get some responses out on those as it relates to Roger. So the sheriff will take a look at those on that question as well.
And then just as a address the second part of that question, if the greenfield option is selected, all of the sheriff's operations would move to the new site.
The idea on the greenfield option is that the sheriff's office, patrol, all of those staff would actually move out to the greenfield site. That gives the opportunity for that building to be able to be opened up and used by the county or other entity. So that's the idea of the greenfield site option.
Second question from Tom Mertz is, if I understood the presentation, the estimated project cost for the greenfield option of $89 million is for approximately 400 bed facility, but a rough estimate of 50 to 60 million would build a facility that would house roughly our population now. So have you considered building the smaller jail with phased expansions over the next 20 years to accommodate the expected growth?
That's a very good question. That's actually the reason I talked a tad bit about what other options are out there. And we have looked at that. We actually have talked about it as a team is, can we build what we need today, right? I mean, that's what you're asking is, can we build enough beds for today? And that's one way to do it. And then look at how you expand. The dilemma though is with that is you're going to build today. When you say build for today, you're going to build a building for potentially 290 inmates, 250 to 290 inmates. That's going to happen in 3 years. So in 3 years, what's your population? You're probably most likely already going to be housing out of county. So you haven't even been able to get to the point of where you are at that point. And then you've got to turn around and you've got to go either ask the community or you're asking the commissioners to pay for an addition to the greenfield site facility. So I think that if you think about that, and the commissioners will have to think about those things, that is one option to think about, but I'm not sure that one meets the needs of the county both today and long term. And then what does that look like from a dollar perspective as we project that out?
The next question from Steve is, you showed 2 sets of cost. What is the total projected cost for each option?
So the total cost, let me go back to that. So the total project cost is the bottom line cost. What we're talking about, and Cole explained this a little bit, was construction cost is the building and brick and mortar, I like to call it. And soft cost is the testing, is the furniture that needs to go in there, potentially site acquisition as it relates to one of the options that has site. It might be some of the other pieces and parts as it relates to fees, as it relates to commissioning, those types of things for the build out. But the total project cost is the bottom line number down at the third line.
I think they may have been referring to the other slide too with the cost related. Yes, that one.
Okay.
And why we split those up.
Yeah, so the reason we split these costs up and didn't total them up is they're very individual. So what we were trying to show here is what is the maintenance and utility cost as it relates to each of the options, and then what is the staff cost related to each of the options, and then what is that out-of-county housing cost that relates to the option. And because there may be I'm not sure there's we wanted to really total that out and say, here's what that overall operation cost looks like. We could do that and share that, but I think you could add those up and kind of see what that looks like at the end of the day.
The next question, I don't have a name on this one. It says, what percentage do you project cost to increase if this project doesn't start for 1 year?
Cole, can you talk a little bit about escalation and cost increase?
Yeah. So Turner Construction has a cost index that they've been keeping for, I think, well over 20 years. So what that does is it tells us what history has shown us. So we're utilizing history to project out what costs will do in the future. For all these three options, we've looked at them starting in it'd be roughly in October of 2021. And so for all three of the options, we're carrying about 8% escalation to factor cost increases of labor and material between now and October of 2021 for the construction start. And then all trades would be competitively bid out off of 100% construction documents. So we'd make sure that we receive competitive pricing for the county, evaluate those bids, and provide a recommendation to award contractors moving forward to supply labor and material for the project then. And normally we see between 5 and 6% on a normal year for escalation for 1 year. So it's assuming about 1.5 years of escalation.
Okay, we had a follow-up kind of comment from Tom Mertz related to the question he had asked that Bob had answered at the beginning. But he kind of wanted to clarify his question related to the sheriff's department and police department being located on the same site. He says, my question had to do more with, are there advantages in having them at the same location?
I believe that there is no advantage or disadvantage. It's just because they're two separate organizations, and the police department doesn't have anything to do with running the jail. So they run their police department from their headquarters, and sheriff runs his from his headquarters. It just so happens that now that they're in the same location, and as we go forward, if this were to go forward, they would be at two separate locations, and the police department would still bring their prisoners to the jail. So there is no advantage, in my opinion, and there's no disadvantage.
Thanks, Bob. And the last question I have, at least at this point, is from Gerald Gillespie. What are the projected costs for additional staff costs for new and expanded programs and programming? Are these included in the staff costs?
So I want to go back to that, and that's a great question. And we actually talked about that today as a group. So the $0 that we've got there on status quo includes the additional specialty staff for the jail. We actually talked about that, and I know the sheriff is currently looking at that, and will have a better response to what that cost looks like as it relates to those things, relates to the additional staff for those types of areas. But I will say, as it relates to this, one of the things that we also talked about as additional staff and specialty staff, we're not sure what that looks like. I mean, we can talk about what it is today, but what is it 5 years from now? What is it from 20 years from now? We have counties that we currently are working with that are hiring actual clinicians, that are hiring doctors, and those types of individuals to come and be a part of what's happening in the facility. So there's different elements to different facilities in different counties, and that may change over time. So that's going to be a hard number to look at, but we're going to project that and look at it from a perspective of what we see today and be able to share that information back to the county commissioners at the commission meeting. So that's one of our tasks to come back with. So Gerald, we'll make sure we get that incorporated. Did we have any other questions?
That's all the questions we've received.
Great. Any other questions? I'll open it up for a couple minutes here just to see if there's anything else that anybody else has as it relates to what we've shown to date or what we've talked about here to date.
Jeff, this is Bob again. I want to interject a couple of things that we still have a fourth option out there, and that is that we remain status quo and we don't do anything. So if this doesn't even get put on the ballot, we're still going to just keep shipping people out of county. And I want to bring that number out that we have spent nearly $7 million to date on housing prisoners out of county. And I want everyone to remember that it's going to be up to the taxpayer, regardless of which one that the commissioners choose to put on the ballot or not put on the ballot. It's still going to be up to the taxpayer, the /citizen, to vote on whether they want that or not. And it's not going to be up to the commissioners. We're not going to say Saline County commissioners are going to go for option 1, 2, or 3, or 4, and that's the way it's going to be. That's not how it's going to happen. The citizen will choose what's going to happen here in the end. So that's my speech.
Thanks, Bob. Anything else on the questions?
That's all we got.
Okay, well, we will close the question component. Do feel free to reach out to the commissioners, to Phil, to the sheriff or staff if you have any additional questions. They will pass those along to both Trainer HL and Turner to answer or try to get information back. So we're not, this isn't the end here at the end of the day and we all walk away. We want to make sure that we provide the right information and all the information to make sure we can get a good educated decision made. So with that being said, what are our next steps? And so our upcoming target dates, and we label it that way because not knowing what's going to happen here over the next 30 to 60 days or beyond, we have talked about our town halls that we've done and trying to get to this date here to be done and feel like we've put good information out there to everybody. But on the same hand, recognizing we had some dates put forward to kind of say, here's what we're going to do. So I will tell you that the commissioners are still, at this point, planning to have a meeting on April 7th to discuss these options and to determine what's in the best interest of Saline County. So keep posted on what that is here over the next few weeks. I know Phil and his staff and the commissioners will make sure that the community knows when that is happening and the time that happens, even if that goes out further. There will be community outreach. So whether that's virtual like we're doing today, or whether we can have some face-to-face meetings again, those things will be out there to be able to talk to the community and reach back out and see what the community's thinking. And then the potential referendum for fall of 2020. So as Bob has stated, just as Trainer HL, we've provided the information and now the commissioners and the community can make a choice on what's in the best interest of Saline County. So those are the next steps. Bob, I'll let you close us out.
Okay, I would like for you, if you could please, to unmute the commissioners that are listed on your screen so that I can get a motion and a second from them. So I'll give you a minute to Monty Shadwick, Sparks, Kathy White is Mike White's contact there, and Jim. If you would unmute those for us, please.
The only one I have muted on mute right now is Katie White. It's not letting me, it could be muted on their own end.
Okay, well, I'll get a motion from either Jim, Monty, or Roger to end the meeting for today.
Make a motion, we end the meeting.
Jim Lee, I second it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we call today's meeting to an end. So all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. We
Thank you.
will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate everyone that has participated tonight. And thank you, Trainer and Turner. Thank you very much.